At Julu stood the future Hegemon-King of Western Chu, a man who never claimed the imperial crown, yet became the only defeated warlord whom Sima Qian admitted into the basic annals, placing his name beside the emperor's. But before history raised Xiang Yu so high, he made himself a man with nowhere left to go. Zhao starved behind Julu's walls. More than 10 rebel camps watched outside, and none moved. Then Xiang Yu crossed the river. Sima Qian records that he sank the boats, shattered the cauldrons, burned the shelters, and carried only 3 days of food. Later generations remembered an army destroying its road home. But desperation alone cannot defeat an imperial war machine. Xiang Yu saw its hidden artery. The siege did not live in the walls, but in the grain road. Sever it, and Qin's strength would become weight, its numbers hunger, its iron circle a cage. How could a young commander break the army guarding an empire? And why would that same method later make him unable to rule? The answer raised Xiang Yu from Julu as the most feared man in China and exposed the flaw that would destroy him. That story did not begin at Julu. It began with a victory so complete that it taught the Qin state to believe every problem could be solved by greater pressure. In 221 BCE, Qin conquered the last of its rivals and ended the Warring States era. 6 royal houses had fallen. Walls between former kingdoms were torn down. Commanderies replaced hereditary domains. Weights, measures, coinage, roads, and written forms were drawn toward imperial standards. Beneath those reforms stood a system built for mobilization. Households were registered. Grain could be counted. Labor could be summoned. Military rank could be earned through service and victory. The state reached into the village, measured what it found, and converted fields into taxes, taxes into provisions, and provisions into armies. That machinery had made unification possible. It also taught the new empire a dangerous lesson. Because coercion had opened every gate before, more coercion seemed capable of opening every gate still to come. The first emperor drove roads across the realm, joined defensive walls in the north, dispatched armies toward the south, moved populations, and raised monumental works around his capital and tomb. None of these projects alone explains the fall of Qin. Empires do not collapse because one stone is too heavy. They collapse when every stone is placed upon the same beam, and the state loses the ability to hear it cracking. In 210 BCE, the first emperor died while traveling in the east. His death did not merely remove a ruler. It opened the sealed chamber at the center of the empire. According to the traditional account, the eunuch Zhao Gao and Chancellor Li Si concealed the death during the return journey, manipulated the succession, and placed the younger son Hu Hai on the throne as the second emperor. The elder son Fusu, the strongest candidate to succeed, was ordered to die. The general Meng Tian, whose name was bound to Qin's northern power, was also destroyed. Princes, officials, and commanders learned that closeness to the throne offered no safety. The empire still possessed its sword, but the hand gripping it had begun to suspect every finger. 1 year later, rebellion erupted. The first uprising associated with Chen Sheng and Wu Guang was defeated, yet defeat could not restore the fear on which Qin obedience had depended. Once one group had raised the banner, others discovered that the empire could bleed. Former nobles revived the names of Chu, Zhao, Wei, Yin, Han, and Qi. Local officers changed allegiance. Peasants, fugitives, conscripts, and ambitious commanders flowed into armies that claimed to avenge the old states. The map that Qin had hammered into one sheet of metal began splitting again along its ancient seams. Among the rebels were Xiang Liang and his nephew Xiang Yu, descendants of a military family from the former state of Chu. Chu had been conquered by Qin less than 2 decades earlier, but memory survives longer than a dynasty expects. In villages and market towns, the name of Chu still carried the weight of a lost homeland. Xiang Liang gave that memory soldiers. Xiang Yu gave fury. He was young, physically imposing, and already marked by the kind of confidence that makes caution look like cowardice. Later tradition would remember his strength, his pride, and his desire to master the art of defeating not one man, but 10,000. Yet at this stage, he was not the ruler of a restored kingdom. He was the blade in his uncle's hand. The Qin court answered the rebellion with a commander named Zhang Han. When insurgents approached the imperial heartland, Zhang Han reportedly armed men laboring around the mausoleum complex and turned them into a field force. It was an act born from emergency, but it revealed that the Qin system had not yet become an empty shell. The state could still gather bodies, issue weapons, appoint officers, and move an army quickly enough to save the capital. Zhang Han crushed the first rebel regime, defeated one army after another, and in 208 BCE killed Xiang Liang after surprising his forces near Dingtao. For Xiang Yu, the war had now become personal. For the empire, Zhang Han's victory appeared to prove that the old method still worked. Apply force, break the rebel center, move to the next fire. But Zhang Han misunderstood the shape of the blaze. The uprisings were no longer separate sparks. They were beginning to warm one another. After defeating Xiang Liang, Zhang Han turned north against the restored state of Zhao. Zhao's forces were driven back, and their ruler took refuge at Julu. Qin commanders Wang Li and Shi Jian closed around the city, while Zhang Han stationed his own army to the south. Between them ran a fortified transport corridor carrying grain to the besiegers. The arrangement was formidable. Wang Li held the throat of Julu. Zhang Han protected the hand squeezing it. As long as food continued moving along the corridor, time fought for Qin. Inside the city, the opposite was true. Every day reduced the defenders. Grain jars emptied. Horses disappeared from their lines. Exhaustion entered the walls before Qin soldiers did. A fortress can stop a spear, but it cannot argue with an empty stomach. Zhao sent appeals in every direction, calling on the revived states to understand what was at stake. If Julu fell, Qin would not merely destroy one rebel court. It would recover the initiative, isolate the uprisings, and begin extinguishing them one by one. The princes understood. Their armies came, then they stopped. Later reconstructions often present Julu as roughly 50,000 Chu troops facing as many as 400,000 Qin soldiers. Those figures convey the scale of the imbalance, but they are not modern muster rolls. Sima Qian explicitly records Xiang Yu first sending 20,000 men across the river under Yingbu and General Pu. He also places Chun Yu with perhaps 20 or 30,000 Zhao troops north of Julu and describes more than 10 fortified camps belonging to the relief coalition. The full strength of Xiang Yu's main army is not securely preserved. Later estimates usually place it between 50 and 70,000. The Qin total is equally uncertain, but tradition divides an army of roughly 400,000 between two great bodies: Wang Li's besiegers around Julu and Zhang Han's supporting army to the south. Whatever the exact totals, the imbalance at the point of decision was real. Xiang Yu's Chu army was substantially smaller, while much of the anti-Qin coalition remained behind its walls. Nor was the Qin host a leaderless mass. Zhang Han had destroyed Chen Sheng's rebel regime and killed Xiang Liang at Dingtao. Wang Li came from the military house of Wang Jian, the general whose campaigns had helped Qin conquer the old kingdoms. Alongside them stood commanders such as Su Jiao and Shi Jian. On the Chu side were Xiang Yu, still untested in supreme command, the ferocious Yingbu, and General Pu. Around them waited Chun Yu and the officers of the restored states. More soldiers and more banners, but no unified will. On paper, Qin possessed the larger force and the more experienced command. In reality, it had two armies joined by one grain road. The rebels had many armies joined by almost nothing. From their ramparts, the coalition commanders could see Qin banners, siege works, and dust rising above the supply corridor. They also remembered what Zhang Han had done to the armies before them. A failed relief attack would not save Zhao. It would feed another army into Qin's jaws. One Zhao detachment had already gone forward and been destroyed. Prudence therefore became delay. Delay became paralysis, and paralysis dressed itself in the language of strategy. The army of Chu was supposed to break that paralysis. Instead, it halted at Anyang. King Huai of Chu had placed Song Yi in supreme command, with Xiang Yu as his deputy. Song Yi is often remembered as the cautious general who waited while Julu starved. His decision may not have been simple cowardice. Rain, winter, provisions, and the condition of the troops mattered. He may also have hoped that Qin and Zhao would exhaust one another, allowing Chu to enter after both had weakened. In the cold arithmetic of coalition war, letting an ally bleed can look like wisdom. But the arithmetic was changing faster than Song Yi admitted. If Zhao vanished, Chu would stand closer to the blade. If the relief army consumed its supplies while waiting, caution would produce the same ruin as defeat. And if no commander dared move first, Qin would win without having to defeat the coalition at all. Xiang Yu confronted his superior. He argued that the moment required speed, that the soldiers were hungry and cold, and that waiting would surrender the initiative. Song Yi did not yield. So Xiang Yu chose the solution that would define both his greatness and his danger. He removed the obstacle by force. He entered Song Yi's tent and killed him. The act was not a battlefield maneuver. It was an execution within his own chain of command. Xiang Yu then justified the killing as punishment for treason and reported it to the Chu court. Faced with a completed fact and an army already bending toward the victor, King Huai confirmed Xiang Yu as commander. In a single stroke, Xiang Yu had rescued the campaign from indecision and announced that law would not restrain him when law stood between him and his objective. The same quality would terrify enemies at Julu. Years later, it would terrify allies as well. First, he sent a smaller force under Ingbu and another Chu commander across the river. They gained enough ground for the trapped Zhao leaders to demand more. Xiang Yu then brought the main army forward. The river lay between his soldiers and the Qin host. Once across, they would enter a landscape already stripped by armies, with the enemy controlling the largest stores nearby. A conventional commander would have protected the boats, established depots, and preserved a line of retreat. Xiang Yu did the opposite. Sima Qian's account says that the Chu troops sank their boats, broke their cauldrons, burned their shelters, and carried provisions for only 3 days. Whether every vessel disappeared beneath the water exactly as later memory imagined matters less than the meaning the story preserved. Every cooking pot was a small promise of tomorrow. Xiang Yu smashed tomorrow in front of the men who would have to win it back. The order is often described as an act of motivation, as those soldiers become stronger simply because escape has been denied to them. That explanation is incomplete. Trapped troops can fight with desperation, but they can also panic, disintegrate, or turn on their commander. Destroying a retreat is not courage by itself. It is a wager that becomes rational only when the commander has identified a victory that can be reached before hunger arrives. Xiang Yu had identified it. The Chu army was not going to feed itself from wagons behind it. It would feed itself from the stores ahead. To survive, it had to strike the Qin transport corridor, separate Wang Li's besieging army from Zhang Han's support, and force a decision before the 3 days ended. Xiang Yu had not abandoned logistics. He had made enemy logistics the first prize of battle. The attack began not as a single magnificent collision, but as a sequence of blows against the structure holding the Qin position together. Chu troops drove toward the fortified road. Qin formations moved to protect it. Spears locked, crossbows answered, chariots and cavalry searched for openings, and the flat country around Julu disappeared beneath dust, banners, and the black movement of massed infantry. The men of Chu fought with the river behind them and food ahead. Each step backward approached starvation. Each step forward approached the grain that would let them live. The Chronicles speak of 9 engagements and remember the soldiers of Chu as fighting 1 against 10. Such phrases belong partly to the language of heroic history, not to an audited battlefield report. Yet the operational result is clear. Xiang Yu repeatedly struck the Qin system, broke the supply connection, and isolated Wang Li's army around Julu. That changed the meaning of every soldier on the field. Before the corridor was cut, Qin numbers represented endurance. After it was cut, they represented mouths. Before the attack, the siege walls trapped Zhao. After the attack, those same works fixed Wang Li's troops in a position that could no longer be sustained. The Qin army had built a cage around Julu. Xiang Yu closed the door behind the jailer. From the surrounding camps, the rebel generals watched the impossible become possible. At first, they remained behind their defenses. No prince wished to risk his army for another prince's survival. But coalitions often wait for one force to change the price of courage. Once Chu broke the Qin corridor and Wang Li began to falter, hesitation became more dangerous than participation. If Xiang Yu won without them, he would remember who had watched. If Qin recovered, they would be isolated in turn. The same men who had treated the battlefield as a furnace now rushed toward it, because Xiang Yu had changed which side of the fire they occupied. The pressure on Wang Li's army became unbearable. Qin General Su Jiao was killed. Wang Li was captured. Shi Jian, refusing surrender, died rather than submit. The army that had seemed capable of strangling Julu was broken apart under converging attacks. Then came one of the most theatrical moments in Sima Qian's narrative. When Xiang Yu summoned the commanders of the rebel states, they entered his gate on their knees and did not dare look up. Whether every gesture unfolded exactly so, the political meaning is unmistakable. Before Julu, Xiang Yu had been a subordinate who seized command by killing his superior. After Julu, he was the commander before whom the princes lowered their eyes. The battle had done more than relieve a city. It had redistributed authority across the rebellion. Yet the Qin army had not vanished in a single afternoon. Zhang Han still commanded a substantial force south of the battlefield. He remained experienced, dangerous, and capable of continuing the war. This is where the fate of Qin ceased to be a question of battlefield strength alone. News of defeat traveled toward the capital. Requests, explanations, and warnings followed. But the court of the Second Emperor no longer knew how to receive bad news without searching for treason inside it. Zhao Gao had concentrated power by destroying rivals and frightening officials into silence. A general who lost might be executed. A general who retained too much power might also be executed. Victory could provoke jealousy. Defeat could invite annihilation. The empire demanded that its commanders save it, while teaching them that returning to court might be more dangerous than facing the enemy. Zhang Han's representative Sima Xin'an went to the capital seeking direction and support. He was denied a secure audience and fled, according to the traditional account, after realizing that Zhao Gao's hostility had placed him in danger. When he returned to the army, he brought back a message more destructive than any rebel arrow. The court could no longer be trusted to protect the men fighting for it. That was the wound Xiang Yu could widen. He continued pressing Zhang Han while negotiations moved beneath the fighting. The Qin commander faced 3 enemies at once. In front stood Xiang Yu. Behind stood a court that might punish him whether he won or lost. Within his own camp stood exhausted soldiers who could see that the state demanding their loyalty no longer trusted their commanders. Eventually, Zhang Han and a vast body of Qin troops surrendered. Their surrender is often folded into the Battle of Julu as though all of it happened in one continuous clash. It did not. Wang Li's besieging army was destroyed at Julu. Zhang Han's submission came later, after further fighting and political isolation. The distinction matters because it reveals the true scale of the collapse. Xiang Yu did not defeat every Qin soldier at one point on the map. He broke the battlefield system at Julu, then allowed suspicion inside the Qin court to finish what his army had begun. The surrendered soldiers soon discovered that laying down their weapons did not mean the war had released them. Months later, at Xin'an, Xiang Yu ordered the destruction of more than 200,000 surrendered Qin soldiers. Sima Qian records that the Chu army struck at night and pitted the captives south of the city. For centuries, that single verb was understood to mean that Xiang Yu buried them alive in mass graves. Whether every prisoner was literally buried alive, and whether the round total is exact, cannot now be verified. But Chinese historical memory preserved Xin'an beside Chongping as one of antiquity's bloodiest massacres of surrendered soldiers. More than 200,000 men who had laid down their weapons, then discovered that surrender had merely brought death closer. This was not the Battle of Julu. It was the shadow cast by Julu. The decision solved an immediate problem through terror. It also revealed the boundary of Xiang Yu's political imagination. On a battlefield, he reduced uncertainty by removing alternatives. He killed Song Yi and became commander. He destroyed the boats and made victory the only road. He broke the supply line and made Wang Li's position impossible. When faced with an army of prisoners whose future loyalty was uncertain, he again removed the alternative. The method was brutally consistent. So was the cost. In the moral language through which later Chinese historians judged the rise and fall of rulers, Xin'an became more than an atrocity. It became evidence that Xiang Yu had set himself against the mandate of heaven. Heaven's mandate was not supposed to reward the man who could kill the most. It justified the ruler who could turn victory into moral order, protect the people who submitted, and make former enemies believe they had a place beneath the new dynasty. By accepting surrender and then destroying the surrendered, Xiang Yu made submission another road to death. He could force the princes to kneel, but he made it far harder for all under heaven to believe that heaven had entrusted the realm to him. Terror can empty a road, silence a council, or make an army kneel. It cannot by itself persuade a conquered population that tomorrow beneath a new ruler will be safer than yesterday beneath the old one. Every enemy who heard what happened at Xin'an gained a reason to resist longer. Every ally learned that standing beside Xiang Yu did not guarantee protection from him. The weapon that made him supreme at Julu was already cutting the ground beneath his future throne. Meanwhile, another rebel commander was moving west. While Xiang Yu shattered Qin power in the north, Liu Bang advanced toward the imperial heartland through a different corridor and with a different political instinct. He was not Xiang Yu's equal in personal ferocity. He did not command the battlefield merely by appearing upon it. But he understood something the conqueror of Julu repeatedly neglected. A gate opened by negotiation could be more valuable than a wall broken by force, and a surrendered official could become an administrator instead of corpse. In 207 BCE, Liu Bang entered Guangzhou. Xing, the final Qin ruler, surrendered. The empire that had claimed eternal succession ended scarcely 15 years after unification. Yet the fall of Qin did not bring peace. The old imperial roof had collapsed, and beneath it stood commanders, restored kings, frightened populations, and armies carrying incompatible visions of what should replace it. Xiang Yu arrived as the strongest military figure among them. At Julu, he had earned the obedience of the coalition through awe. He would divide the former empire into kingdoms and assume the title Hegemon-King of Western Chu. But awe is not administration. A realm cannot be held forever in the instant before a cavalry charge. Grain must be collected without provoking endless revolt. Appointments must create loyalty instead of resentment. Rivals must sometimes be absorbed rather than humiliated. Victory must become an order in which the defeated can imagine living. Xiang Yu had mastered the art of the point of no return. Liu Bang would master the art of leaving other men a road toward him. That difference would shape the Chu-Han War. Xiang Yu won battles with a brilliance that could look supernatural. He struck faster, fought harder, and repeatedly forced stronger coalitions to recoil. But the territories behind him did not always stay won. Liu Bang lost battles, retreated, rebuilt, delegated authority, and returned. One man was a thunderbolt, the other was a river. Thunder could split the tallest tree in a heartbeat. The river could lose a bend, find another channel, and continue toward the sea. Julu, therefore, stands at the hinge between two collapses and two attempts at reconstruction. It was the battle that broke the remaining prestige of Qin arms and rescued the rebellion from paralysis. It transformed Xiang Yu from an enraged young commander into the arbiter of the rebel world. It showed that an imperial army could be defeated not by matching its size, but by understanding the system that allowed its size to exist. The siege depended on a road. The road depended on protection. The army depended on grain. And the general depended on a court that no longer trusted him. Xiang Yu attacked every dependency in sequence. But Julu also demonstrated the limit of his genius. He could turn men into weapons by denying them retreat. He could turn enemy numbers into hunger by cutting their supply. He could turn the hesitation of allies into submission by winning before their eyes. What he could not do was turn fear into durable legitimacy. The commander who understood that an army needed one road to survive never learned that a realm needed many roads by which former enemies could enter the new order. The legend remembers the shattered cauldrons because they make courage visible. The deeper history lies in what could not be seen. Grain moving along a fortified corridor, suspicion moving through the Qin court, ambition moving between rebel camps, and authority moving from a dying empire into the hands of a man who could conquer the world before him, but not the world that came after. At Julu, the boats sank, the cauldrons broke, and the Qin line gave way. An empire lost its final shield. A warlord became a hegemon. And China stepped across a point of no return. Not into peace, but into the greater struggle that would decide whether the ruins of Qin belonged to Xiang Yu or Liu Bang. If you want to follow the next battlefield where strategy, courage, and catastrophe remade China, subscribe and join us for the next episode of China's Greatest Battles. The drums are already sounding.